Surviving America's Autocratic Oligarchy, Episode 6. Welcome to Law and Society. Before I begin today's episode, I would like to take the time to thank a lot of you who join me on a daily or a monthly or weekly basis and give me the likes, the shares, and sometimes donations. This is a completely free channel, and donations are open for you to give donations, but there's no obligation to do so. When I first undertook what I intended to do from the very beginning, I said that education and the dissemination of information must be free and freely available to everybody. And that was in 2012 when I published my first book that I wrote that. And, since 2012, it has gone the other way, where everything that is available for you to get information from, not everything, but most things, you have to pay for. And then there's this social structure that has gone up in social media where, it is a capitalist environment. But I'm sad to say that I'm a proud American, but I'm not entirely a capitalist over being just an engaged citizen. So, in short, what I'd like to say is, thank you to all of you who give me your time. Thank you to all of you who have donated to my channel. I welcome your time and your donations. Don't feel obligated to do so, but if you so feel moved, please contribute to this channel, because it is just me talking to you as an engaged citizen. With that said, please subscribe and let's dive in. So we heard through the week that the Supreme Court had ruled that the frozen aid for foreign aid has to be restored, has to be unfrozen, and then sent it back to the district court to determine the specifics of what would happen. Well, Judge Ali came out with the final decision and said that the U.S. government had to unfreeze those funds and, disperse those aids by Monday. Monday is the deadline when they can do it by the latest without violating the district court's order. Well, I think that there's a good chance that Donald Trump will even try to appeal this unless all of his attorneys, even the ones he has installed in the DOJ, tell him that it is futile. If that happens, then we are probably going to see a quiet release of those frozen funds, and Donald Trump may make it more difficult to get those to Ukraine, whether that be transportation of it, whether that be conveyance of whatever that aid is. He may not, I was going down this rabbit hole, so I'm going to take you down with me. And it was, what if after all the appellate process happens and he doesn't listen to the Supreme Court saying unfreeze the funds, what would happen? It would fall on the Secretary of State and the Treasury, and they would line up with the president. Then Congress would have to intervene and probably use Congress's resources and the resources of several states to deliver the aid that's necessary. Because the only way that Donald Trump can get out of not not giving that aid to Ukraine is by an act of Congress, because Congress appropriated that money for foreign aid. Not the Ukraine aid, though. I believe that this foreign aid is for the U.S. aid programs that's about $2 billion worth of programs. So this is not about the Ukraine aid. This is about the U.S. aid going out for international development and humanitarian purposes. So, go down to a point where he doesn't listen, and the court and Congress get together and they figure out a way of getting that aid to Ukraine. And then I don't know what happens in terms of, holding Donald Trump accountable, because technically that would be an impeachable offense to not listen to direct Supreme Court order. So let's just leave it at that point of the rabbit hole here. Now let's just assume that on Monday he releases the aid, and it finally goes to the people who need the aid, and the food and the food paste and the HIV medicine and the aid for Ebola prevention, while Ebola is spinning out of control in Africa at the moment. And let me just say as a caveat, the reason why I can't think of all the countries specifically because Africa is a massive continent and it has a lot of countries. The condom story came from Mozambique. I think so came the story of male circumcision. But there are other parts of Africa where they're like Somalia, I believe, and even Sudan may not be. But there are parts of Africa that are in drought-ridden areas where, food is a scarcity, and therefore food aid has to go, medicine aid has to go. People who take basic care of these people on the basis of these countries allowing us to go in there and have a diplomatic influence on that region of the world by developing those regions of the world. So that's the need for, that's our need for unfreezing this foreign aid for U.S. aid. So the next thing is Donald Trump has paused the tariffs to Canada, the automobile tariffs, for 30 days. And he has, after a very good conversation with President Sheinbaum of Mexico, decided that he's not going to impose those sanctions on Mexico for now. Now, this 30-day stopgap nonsense, just to say that the tariffs will do any good, is kind of like Donald Trump telling us that he's going to release his tax information and medical history, and which still hasn't happened in the last 9 odd years. So this threat of tariffs is building bad blood between the countries. And some of the tariffs are still on. He hasn't made any announcement on going back on the China tariffs, which are still on. And so the markets are slowly going down, not as precipitously, but at some point, because the markets don't like volatility, Donald will break something in a way that the markets will perceive as an economic disaster for the world, and it will just go into free fall, and then no one can control it, and then you have to suspend trading in order to stop the bleeding. And every day that you open, it goes further down. Every day you open, it goes further down. Because, And the reason why it would happen is because these tariffs, the on and off things, will make things expensive things more scarce because the commodities needed to make the things available to the people, whether it be cars or houses or appliances, or even something as small as an orange or an apple. Like if you're going about the immigration the way that you are, where you are scaring undocumented farmers who are working the fields and have been for years, not jobs Americans would take on a livable wage. You have this flux, this immigration flux happening, and then you have the volatility happening with the trade wars. And at some point in the supply chain, and also then you put into play the huge federal cuts that is going into the workforce. Remember, the US government, including the military, is the largest employer in the United States. I don't know, millions. It's millions of people. And the cuts will cause an economic shock in those regions. The families there will be attrition, and there will be withholding of funds, less spending. Consumer spending is going to go down. The reports are going to show losses, increase in unemployment, decrease in there'd be a decrease in the productivity and the availability of products all around the country. And all of that will happen in stages, right? But at some point, the markets will realize that the safety nets that were there for the markets, economic markets, to stay at bay can no longer withstand this volatility. And some little thing would just set it off. We don't know what that would be. Whether that even would be something political that Donald does, or whether these tariffs back and forth will. But it creates instability. It makes foreseeability difficult. It creates a trepidous market. It may create a bear market at some point if there is losses to the point that companies have to lay off workers. So it's all part of, it's this huge thing, right? You can't say one thing will change, but what has been true about the markets, at least for the last 25 years that I've looked at them go up and down and up and down, is that they don't like instability. And so Donald Trump is playing with fire here. Then I want to talk briefly about the fact that Donald Trump has revoked the temporary legal status of Ukrainians who have sought refuge in the United States during the war of Russian aggression. I think that's inhumane. I think it's a betrayal. So then you think about the immigration and the revocation of the refugee statuses of the Afghan refugees who are in America because they helped Americans during the war that was being waged in Afghanistan against Al-Qaeda, Taliban, and then extremism in general. And a lot of them are waiting in Afghanistan as well, but their refugee status is being revoked as I speak. And that is such a huge, huge betrayal. You talk about betrayal, you have to go to, the veterans and the fact that they are thinking about cutting 35% of the workforce that services the Veterans Affairs Department. That is, I believe, necessary to be fully funded so it can fully take care of our veterans and provide our veterans, our heroes, the best of us, the services they need, whether that be medical, psychological, getting jobs. Veterans Affairs needs to be fully funded, and it needs to have the number of people it needs to have. It's not for Doji and Elon Musk to say what the policy will be. Here's a reminder that Doji and Elon Musk, what they're doing is illegal. After Donald Trump conceded during the speech in Congress that Elon Musk is the one heading up Doji, it is clear that it is performing as a super agency over congressionally legislated agencies and congressionally confirmed agency heads, and arbitrarily and capriciously cutting funding from different departments and presumptively firing or putting on leave people that they don't have the authority to order, because it is not a department of the executive government, because only way a new department of the executive government can happen is by congressional mandate. And Congress, Mike Johnson keeps saying, yeah, we're going to codify Doji's efforts. Well, they haven't done it yet. Doing it in retrospect doesn't somehow just make these things legal. So, a couple of other things. There's a change in White House policy where more news is going to come out of social media, less actual briefings. That's just distancing itself from the press. The press has the right to a free press and to not be abridged by the government. Now, I believe that includes access to the government. If that access is not provided, then the press cannot get the news out to the people. But the Supreme Court, I don't think has said anything about access in the White House or in the press room as being protected and part of freedom of the press. But I would not be shocked if the Supreme Court sided with the press if a case went up in this regard. So the gutting of the departments continue, whether that be education, military with 8% cuts every year for the next 5 years, cyber defense halted against Russia specifically, and you wonder why that is. And Russia is saying, yeah, our vision now aligns with America's vision. That's really distorted. That doesn't mean Russia's vision has changed, because they're still bombing Ukraine. So it means that America's posture has changed decisively. Well, you can't do that with NATO. He can't get out of NATO without 2/3 of the Senate or an act of Congress. So what's he going to do? He's going to make our institutions vulnerable, so they may be vulnerable to attack from outside. And I maintain that Donald Trump and Elon Musk are enemies of the state, making our government more vulnerable from the inside, so we may not be able to handle crises that may happen, whether that be health crises like the measles outbreak that's happening, or the Ukraine, the Gaza, the South China Sea crises that we have responsibilities in. We're going to see cut in Social Security, although they're saying that no, that we're not going to do that. But Doji is going to there. You go to doji.gov and you see what departments they've gone and arbitrarily cut money and then capriciously just changed $8 billion to $8 million, or taken out more money out because they don't know where the sources were, where they got that money. So that mess keeps happening. and the wars in the courts keep happening. So I'll end with this. Donald Trump, you need to release that foreign aid that the Supreme Court has now directed you to release, and the lower court has given you the means and the deadline by which they should be released, because that foreign aid is crucial. And this is also a showing that the Supreme Court will side with Congress for congressionally appropriated funding. Will they stand with for-cause employees who are by statute should be given notice, and then Congress should be notified to be fired, like high department officials who have been confirmed in independent positions like the IG? We haven't gotten to that yet in the Supreme Court. And I believe that the Hampton-Dillinger case, Mr. Dillinger is deciding not to go to the Supreme Court because he lost his appeal. Not really updated on that news. So go check out what's happening with Mr. Dillinger. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment box. I've gone on for over 20 minutes. So thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon.